Welcome to the Not Superheroes Gets Dads podcast. No, we can't fly. No, we can't shoot lasers or pick up giant buildings. But what we can do is help set the foundations for our families, be presents for our kids, and combat generational cycles. On this podcast, we dive into everything dad related, from the struggles we deal with as fathers to what our favorite thing to barbecue is. And hello, my name is Sean Laurie. I hope you guys are doing great. Whenever you guys are listening to this or watching this, I hope everything is going well for you guys. If you're watching or listening, I'm wearing my Clippers shirt. You know, it's NBA playoffs. It's finally here, right? So we'll see if my Clippers can actually do something this year. But with that being said, guys, I want to talk about something that I feel like is really important that honestly should be talked about more. And I guess I would say I would like to call this, I guess, more so healing our younger selves, right? So what I mean by that is our childhood shapes us, right? Our childhood makes us who we are today. A lot of it, right? And it can be good or bad, right? Some of us have dealt with childhood trauma, and some of us have just dealt with different obstacles and different things like that, right? Where I like to call it the 3 E's, right? So that's event, experience, and then the effect, right? And so there's certain events that took place in all of our lives, right? And certain experience that we got from those things, and then how it affected us. And the thing is, with the experience, a lot of times we are either told what the experience was, or we kind of downplay our experience because of maybe a family member or friend or whatever told us one thing when that's not really how we feel, right? So the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's something I feel like is needed, is so important for us to really dive into why we do certain things, right? Why do we kind of view certain obstacles or certain situations? And it's so important. Like, women do this very well, right? Where they're kind of really analyze certain things and why they think a certain way and why did this happen. As men, we're not always the best at doing that, right? Matter of fact, a lot of times we know we have certain struggles, and instead of addressing it, we'll kind of just be like, you know what, I'm gonna address this when I have a family. When I have a family, I'm gonna do it this way, right? When I have a family, that's when I'm gonna address all these issues that I have. And the problem when we do that is a lot of times we ignore it, so all it does is carry over. Right, all it does is carry over, and now all of a sudden you're still having that's how generational cycles continue, right? Because it's like, okay, no, you know what, I'm gonna just push through this. I know I'm struggling in this area. I know I have issues in this, but you know, I'm gonna just do it differently. When I have kids, I'm gonna do it differently, and sometimes we do, right? But then there's also times where we might overdo certain things because of the lack of, or because of certain things we didn't get from it. Right? And so I think it's so important at times to really do that self-evaluation. When I had was it Daniel on a few weeks ago, right, where he talked about the importance of, hey, you know what, it is good to be able to speak to a therapist or have a life coach or have someone that's really going to be able to help you tap into certain things, right? And so it doesn't mean that, you know, all of our experiences were bad. No, of course, there's some good experiences too, but there's certain things that we take with us that we don't realize that we're taking with us, right? For example, right, if you didn't have that father figure in the household, right, or you didn't have the mother in the household, right, how did that affect you? How does that still affect you, right? A lot of times we don't dive into that. We just kind of push through, you know, where it's like for me, there was plenty of times for me, I can speak for myself, where I had to kind of be the man of the house, right? And at a young age, I was responsible for my sister, and at times I had to make sure certain things was done for my mom too, right? And again, my mom was she had me super young at 18, so we kind of grew up together, you know what I mean? Or we did grow up together, I should say. So there were certain things though that I took with me. There were certain things where I didn't realize I'm constantly trying to make sure everyone else is good, and I would ignore my own needs, right, and what I need from it. And that was something I didn't realize until I got older, until I really started doing the work for myself, right, where I'm in a place of I'm constantly trying to fix everything. And by nature, as men, we already want to fix things. But I was used to, okay, I'm going to solve the solution because at the end of the day, they need me to, right? And there's plenty of other situations where, you know, I remember one, I'm not going to say his name, but someone I was working with, right, and helping him through his situation. But, you know, growing up where he saw, you know, porn and sexual activities and things like that at a young age. And it was just like natural for him, right? To like, literally, that was like his environment, right? And how that, like, imagine how that would affect you as a young boy, right? Imagine how that impacts you, right? Where now all of a sudden you view women maybe a certain light, right? Or it's difficult for you to have a real relationship because you thinking, oh, I could just go to the next one, right? I know for me, I can speak for me, right? Where, and I don't even think my mom realized like the impact that it had, but I was younger. I don't remember, like fourth, third, some fifth grade, something like that. I had a girlfriend or whatever, and then you know we broke up. We was sad, or I was sad, I should say. I was sad, and I remember she told me like, you know what, there no need to, you never need to cry for no female. Basically, is what she said. Basically, to sum it up, I don't even know if she remembers this, but like you don't need to ever cry for a female. You know what I mean? Like just go. Basically, there's always someone else. Like go to the next one, right? And so that's how I kind of approached it. And then also seeing like sometimes how my mom moved and seeing how other people move, I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna take that same approach, right? And I didn't realize that that was actually doing more harm than good for me, right? And I had to realize that, like, dang, okay. And it wasn't until I had my family where I started to really like, dang, is that how I want to operate? Do I want to operate where I'm constantly chasing the next female, right? And having kids everywhere. Again, everyone has their own situation, so that happens. That's part of life. You know, I'm not saying that as far as like, hey, you know, I'm doing it better than the next person or something like that. No, I'm more so saying for myself, I realized that there were certain things I saw growing up that was impacting me, right? And I look at it like this as well. I remember when I was younger, and my stepdad at the time, you know, he was in the car, and I remember he had a certain view when it came to um, different ethnicities and races and things like that. Where, you know, I'm sure you guys been in the car too or something, right? Where, you know, whatever, someone cuts them off. Oh, those stereotypes, right? An Asian can't drive, or you know, a Hispanic can't do this, or black, whatever, right? And so different stereotypes that he was saying, and I never really bought into it. But what I did buy into, it was like, if you, because that's something he would constantly mention as well, is like it's so important to stay with your race, right? You're gonna marry or date your race, right? And I didn't realize that that was actually a struggle for me, where I'm constantly trying to um, do something because that's what I was told growing up, and that was the environment was like, hey, you have to stay over here because if not, you're quote unquote disappointing uh, your culture, right? You're not for your people or whatever nonsense. Like those are the lies that I believed, right? But it was because of my experience growing up. It was because of what I was told or what I saw. And so with different things like that, it's so important for us to really do that self evaluation. Like, okay, am the things that I experienced or the things that I saw, is that something that I really want to take on, or is that something I just grew up with and so I just kind of accepted it? You know, is that something that, oh, I feel like, yeah, I have to do this because, you know, everyone else in my family said this is what it is. Because so many times, right, or I should say this, I like to say this a lot too. We don't know what we don't know, right? And so our experience as we were kids and things like that, right? That's all we knew, right? And what happens a lot of times, if that's all we know, we just kind of leave it at that, and then we don't continue to grow, right? We don't continue to look at different things, do our own research, right? If okay, you know what, they're saying, hey, all one, whatever, a certain particular race or whatever is all this way, right? That's what your family or your environment as you're growing up, like that's what they're all portraying. But is that necessarily the case, right? Growing up for me, okay, man, you know, I thought all police were a certain way, right? Because I have had those experiences where I got pulled over, or I saw my mom get pulled over, I saw my brother get pulled over. I've had those bad experiences, right? Unfortunately. But I've also had actually some really good experiences too. I should never have to deal with any negative experience, right? Like there's people in this world that's never had a bad experience, and I understand that. But I also understand, okay, for example, was that officer that pulled me over, was he picking on me because of my skin color, or was he picking on me because I actually did run that red light, right? And that's something I had to work through because, again, growing up, it was one of those things. Was like the police are bad, right? And so that's how I'm viewing it. Everything is bad, right? Police is bad. All those different stereotypes where police is bad or no need to go to a doctor. You know what? Hold these emotions in, right? Where I'm sure too for y'all fellas where y'all dealt with that as well, where it's like, hey, you know what? Nah, you just hold it all in. Like you don't need to ever ask for help, right? And for us that got those parents that was kind of like that, we have to also understand what their environment was, right, and how they grew up, right. Our parents wasn't able to express themselves. It was the time where it was like, yo, you say anything, you're getting smacked in the mouth or whatever the case is. They also didn't have the research that we have now, the tools that we have now to be like, okay, this isn't necessarily the healthiest thing to do. Okay, it's okay to kind of let my child express themselves. I don't have to smack them or pop them or whatever the case is just for them trying to voice their opinion, obviously respectfully. But right, so I say all that, man, to just say like the work we have to do for ourselves, the work we have to do to really understand why we think the way we think, why we view the things that we view, right? And so not to take on other people's beliefs and not to take on more so family, I just say, right? Because our tribe, that's one thing. Our biggest fears, one of our biggest fears is being disowned by our tribe, right? And what I mean by that is our family. Like no one ever wants to disappoint their family, right? No one ever wants to do that. So, and that's understandable, but at the same time, understanding, okay, is this how life is supposed to be? Is this how I'm supposed to think? Okay, they told me I should only stay with this culture, right? And that's how I should have my kids, and that's how I should raise them, and that's what you're taking on. But then you're like, man, there's this other lady that's not the same, race as me or whatever the case is, and she really truly cares for me. She's really about me. She's actually none of the negative things that the people said, right? That your family, your friends said that quote unquote, whatever that race is supposed to act this way, and she's not like that, right? And so that's why it's so important, because for me, I look at like we can miss out on so many of our blessings, and not only are we missing out on our blessings, but we're also continuing certain cycles, right? Where it's like, man, okay, you know what? Every time we're mad in our household, we keep everything in, and then it's one of those things when it blows up, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, that's just what I saw, so that's what I'm gonna do, right? And now because of that, now all of a sudden you are continuing that generational cycle, right? So our childhood affects us so much. That's why it's so important when I always talk about it with our daughters and our sons to put that affirmation in them, right? And for them to have that type of value. Now again, as we grow, even as we're raising our kids, right? No child's life is going to be perfect, because there's no such thing as anything really being perfect, right? So like there might be certain things that we're slacking in, right? And we have to try our best to be aware of that. But even then, there's no guarantee that we're going to do everything correctly, right? So for example, my son does basketball, so I try my best to make sure, because that takes a lot of my time, not only from my wife, but it takes a lot of my time from my other kids, right? Because I have 4 kids. So I try my best to, when I'm not doing basketball, to spend time with my kids, right? My oldest one now, she's doing her own thing. She's in college and stuff like that. But even then, I got to do a better job making time for her and all that. So even with all that, with me being conscious of that, my child might feel like, one of my kids might feel like, hey, you know what, Dad, you spend a lot of time with with Junior, which is my oldest son. Like, you spend a lot of time with him because of basketball, right? Which is true. And for me as a dad, should I downplay that and be like, well, no, you know what? I did spend time with you. I did do this. I did do that. And yeah, even if those things are true, my child's experience was dad isn't doing X, Y, and Z with me. Dad isn't, you know, going to all these places with me, right? Dad isn't invested in whatever I'm in, right? So I have to make sure I do a great job. If my kids have some type of event at school, or they do decide they want to get in sports or different activities, that I'm there, that I'm present. Why? Because I know my kids are going to remember, okay, dad was always at the game, even though I'm coaching, but still, it doesn't matter. They're going to look at like, dad was always at the game, right? Why wasn't dad at my play? Why wasn't dad, you know, at my rehearsal or whatever, my dance recital? Why wasn't he at any of those places, but he was there for, you know, he was there for Junior? And I know how that feels, right? So since I know how that feels, I have to make sure, though, that I don't continue that, right? I don't do that where it's like, oh, okay, one child is feeling, one child is quote unquote ahead, or having my kids feel like one child is above the other one, right? And that's something that I'm very, very conscious of, because I don't want my kids to ever feel that way. But again, every child's experience is different. So no matter what we do, there's going to be, and even the positive things. Let's say, for example, you know, we're pushing our kids, hey, nothing less than getting, I don't know, straight A's, almost like a perfectionist, let's just say. And let's say your kid really just embraces that, right? Where they're like, yeah, everything I do, I got to be dang near perfect with. I get straight A's. Any job I do, I'm always getting raises. I'm always, right? So they're doing those things, but then let's say just something like that. Let's say it's affecting their relationship because all of a sudden, hey, you know what, this person's not doing exactly what I want them to do all the time. So they're having issues with relationships, right? So even something positive like that, like I said, like where they're constantly go-getters, where they're aiming for perfection, right? That can turn to a negative thing, right? That all of a sudden can be something where it's like, dang, okay, yeah, like, hold on, let me take a step back, because why am I tripping? Because, you know, the person I'm dating isn't doing the exact same thing that I want them to do, or do it the way I think it should be done, right? So it's like those little small things that we gotta be conscious of when it comes to it. But yeah, I think it's just so big, you guys. I think it's so big for us to really be okay with getting help, right? And again, if you grew up in the air like I grew up, right, where a lot of times we just ball that in, we're gonna handle it ourselves. We don't want help. We do get prideful. I still at times get prideful, right? Where it's like, I'm gonna handle it myself. Why though? Because for so long growing up, that's how I did handle things, right? Of course, we want our kids to be independent. We want them to be self-reliant, but at the same time, we also, it's a balancing act where we're like, hey, we want you to be self-reliant and independent, but we also don't want to constantly be catering you and you relying strictly on us either, right? But understanding that, hey, when you get to a point where it's like, I am stuck, it is okay to ask for help. It is okay to be like, man, I'm struggling in this area. Like, how do you think I can get over this hump? Do you have any suggestions, right? And so that's why I say, for us, especially as men, we don't do the work, right? Think about how we talk to ourselves, right? Think about the negative things at times we say to ourselves, right? Oh man, you know what? If I don't do this overtime, you know what? The we won't be to do this, or you know, the negative things we say, like, oh man, I just lost my job. What type of man am I? What type of father am I? Because I can't buy my kid this. I can't buy my kid that. Oh man, okay, I'm doing this, doing it. Like the way we talk about ourselves. Imagine if you talk that same way, the negative thoughts at times that we talk about ourselves, that we take on, right, from either maybe how we grew up, where you know our parents or our loved ones, whatever, said negative things, and so we kind of took that upon us, or we're constantly in this place of trying to prove it, right? We're trying to prove that we're worth it. We're trying to prove that we're handling business as a man. We're trying to prove that we're worthy or whatever the case is. Think about those negative thoughts that you say about yourself. Imagine if you said those same negative things to your younger self. Would you? Right? Would you say the negative talk that you say to yourself, would you say it to the 8-year-old you? Right? The same way I'm hoping, right, that we try our best not to be negative to our kids. And maybe at times we are, right? Maybe we are. But that's why I say with your younger self. Did your younger self need to be told, by whoever, like, man, that's stupid, you're dumb, like, what are you doing, right? No, you should never do that. Why are you crying? You're weak, right? All these little fake narratives that we was told or whatever, and then we took with us into adulthood, and now we're raising our kids, right? Because at the end of the day, adults are just giant kids, right? That's just what it is, with more responsibilities, right? So would you talk to yourself that way, that 8-year-old you, would you talk to your 8-year-old self the way that maybe you was talked to at times? Or would you have liked it where it's like, hey, you know what, no, it's okay to cry, man. You know what, that's understandable. That whatever took place, like, that was something that you really should cry about, right? Or was it one of those things where it's like, oh, you know what, no, it's good that they told me never to cry. It was good to tell me not to express myself or not to whatever the case is. So that's something that only you can answer, right? I know for myself, like I said, it's something I'm still doing, stuff that I'm still working through, where there's certain things that took place in my childhood, certain experiences I had, right, where I'm like, dang, okay, that did really affect me, right? If you've seen someone get killed, if you've seen someone get shot, if you dealt with death, right? And those are obviously extremes, but any type of thing that isn't necessarily the norm, that shouldn't be really the norm, like, give yourself credit, right? Where it's like, man, I made it through that situation and I'm still here. But that also wasn't a normal situation, and that actually impacted me in a way where I probably should talk to somebody. I probably should really do some really evaluation, right? Why is it that, I feel this way on this particular situation, right? Whatever it is, where, for example, too, oh man, you know what, you have issues when it comes to keeping friends, right? Because of your experience, or you have issues when it comes to women, right? Where you feel like, oh, women should strictly just cater to me. Or, my mom left me, so at the end of the day, I got to make sure no woman ever leaves me, right? Why is that, right? Why is it that you feel like you have to do those things? You have to really dig deep and figure out, okay, what took place in my childhood that is affecting me right now, where I feel like I'm still carrying this weight, right? I'm still carrying that on. When me and my mom, I love my mom, but we got into it one time, over the situation, and I remember it was hard for me, right? That was the first time for me, that was the first time I ever really stuck up to my mom. Because at the end of the day, it's your mom, right? It's your mother, right? The one that birthed you, the one that, at least if you grew up how I grew up, like, you're not going to talk crazy to your mom. You're definitely not going to let no one talk crazy to your mom, right? And which, I respect my mom. I love my mom. But I also know our relationship, some of it was also based off of fear, right? And again, not saying I should ever disrespect my mom. Never that. But at the end of the day, it was hard for me to have conversations. I didn't realize it was hard for me to talk to her. That's why I always kept everything inside. That's why, for me, I moved the way I moved, where it's like, I'm going to just do my move and then you'll find out about it later, right? It's because it was one of those things for me. It was like, man, it's difficult for me to talk to my mom. So when I did finally talk to my mom over a certain situation, it kind of just blew up. Why did it blow up? Is because for so long, I held everything in. For so long, for me, I was so responsible for everything with my siblings and things like that, and I took on a lot of that weight, and I didn't realize it until things came up, right? But I had to address those things with my mom, because it's like, man, okay, you know what, I'm a grown man now, but yeah, you're still treating me like your child, because it was hard for her, which is understandable, right, for moms with that transition, especially with sons. it was hard for her to be like, okay, you know what? No, my son's a man now. Like, I have to talk to him differently. I have to respect how he feels on certain situations, right? Because for so long, it's just like whatever mom says, that's what it is. If mom says this, I just gotta do it, right? And so, um, yeah, I just share all that, y'all, because again, I'm still working through those things. I'm still trying to make sure I'm healing in certain aspects of my life, right? That's why it's so important. It's so important. At least, again, I just feel like it's so important for us to really figure out, okay, what in our childhood really affected us, and is it still affecting us now? Are we having that kind of leak over to our family, right? Into how we're doing things? Are we getting upset with our kids because they can't do something because of that's how our family reacted towards us when we was younger? Are we putting too much on their plate at times, but we're thinking, oh, it's okay because we was able to handle those things, right? Each child is different, right? But we're taking on some of those things that we're taking on the things that we grew up with, our healing process, our trauma. I don't even want to say trauma because not all of it's trauma, but just the different experiences that we had, right? We're taking those things on, and at times we're not really working through it. We're just taking it on, and then we're expecting our kids to take that same thing on instead of understanding, okay, you know what, actually that wasn't normal for me to take on myself. So why am I asking my child to take it on? Or actually, you know what, that's unfair to ask, you know what, my 10, 11-year-old to watch, you know, all of their siblings. Let's say you have like, I don't know, 5 kids, and you're asking your oldest, who's 10 years old, to watch all the siblings, right? While you're out, like, working or whatever the case is, right? Like, and again, it is definitely difficult because we have different things in our lives that happen. Where if you're a single parent, right, you or like me, you're in a different state where you don't have like family, you don't have like a bunch of friends where you can rely on. So obviously, it gets hard, right? It gets hard where you like, man, okay, I kind of do need my child to help in this situation, right? So it's a balancing act though. It's a balancing act, and I just want to encourage you guys though to really just, you know, do the work, because like I said, women are very they're great at this as far as like understanding or trying to understand why they feel this way, why or certain why they think this way, or what happened in their childhood, or what happened um, growing up where it really has affected them, right? But it is, again, guys, like I said, I just really think it's important because it's not only going to affect you as a parent, but it's also going to affect you in your relationships, right? And if you're married, it's definitely going to come up in marriage. Like, there's no, you can kind of get away with it when you're dating, but in marriage is for sure going to come up where certain flaws and certain things that you didn't know was an issue is actually an issue, right? So, yeah, y'all, you know, just want to definitely just give you guys something to think about as far as that goes. Definitely, you know, just definitely, like I said, take the time, fellas, to really just figure out, okay, is there certain things I do at times that I didn't realize I'm doing it because of certain things that happened growing up, right? Because again, well, at least for me, I can speak for myself. I will make sure I suppress a lot of the things that I experienced or went through, because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, why even worried about it? It doesn't matter. But I didn't realize that some of those things was still coming up because there'd be certain triggers for me, certain triggers that would pop up, and now I'm doing maybe similar things that I saw, right, growing up, or I'm treating my kids a certain way where I'm like, man, I didn't even like that. So why am I doing that with my kids, right? But it's because of, okay, that's what I saw growing up. That's what I felt like was the norm. But was it really the norm? And again, our parents do the best they could and can. Um, like I said, we have a lot of more sources and information now to be able to handle certain situations. So yeah, y'all, I definitely just wanted to share this with you guys. Yeah, and as we close out, you know, again, you know, I want to make sure I tell you guys I appreciate you guys. I know I do that a lot, but just the love and the support's been amazing. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you tell a friend. And like always, guys, you don't have to be perfect, but you always have to be present. See you on the next one, y'all.